Welcome to 𝗧Reviews, and the title of this video is How to Build a Home Theater. And you're not going to find me with any hammers or nails in this video. See, that's not the type of building we're talking about. A lot of the time people come to me and they say, I have $600, I want a 5.1 surround sound. And then I tell them to stop, because that's not enough money. Building a surround sound is not just taking a lump of cash and throwing it at a bunch of stuff. You can do that. Usually you need a pretty large or substantial lump to get it all at the same time. If you're looking for a new portable player, you buy one thing. If you're looking for a desk setup, maybe you need to buy one or two things, speakers and something to control them. Home theater, on the other hand, is made up of many intricate little parts, and every one of those can be bought at separate times and give you a lot better, performance for your money. So I'm going to go straight into it. If you have under $1,000 budget, do not try to buy a 5.1 surround sound. It's doable, but every single part of it will be the cheapest, lowest common denominator. Now you can go to Costco and buy a home theater in a box with plastic speakers that are this big, and no, don't do that. My recommendation, this is how you build a home theater. There's the one thing that's a guaranteed you need, is a surround receiver. You have to buy one. You have to buy a surround receiver. You can't start with something else and move on. Now, this is a 7.2. There's 5.1, 5.2, 7.1, 7.2. The real quick difference. If you have enough room in your home theater to have sides and then a back set of speakers, by all means you can go 7.1. If this room was a little bit shorter and the wall was here, there's no point in trying to put speakers directly above your head and then side. So that's more of a room dependent thing than what your actual hopes and aspirations are. My room here is 15 and a half feet. So I have front channels, 2 side channels, and 2 back channels. So when you pick a surround receiver, pick it for the room. Now, it's not hard. It's not like, oh, which specific model. You stick to brands that, well, I trust. Denon, Marantz, Yamaha, Onkyo to some extent, almost never a Sony. Sony's come a long way, but not in their audio department. They have distortion numbers and things you don't want to follow. Pioneer Elite, not the original, not the normal Pioneer. There's some links in the description, and actually there'll be an entire post on Reddit at some point updated for this. Now, which one do you buy, 𝗬𝗲? Well, that's where you have to actually know what you're doing. How many sources do you plan on having? Do you want 4K? Does HDR matter? Are you using a 50-inch television, or do you have a projector? Or do you need both? Like in my case, I have this home theater PC runs to this with 1 HDMI, and then 2 HDMI come out. One goes to that television, and one goes all the way up below the ceiling to my projector, so I needed a receiver with 2 HDMI outputs. Are you planning on running, and this is going to be a little more advanced, like external amplifiers? Those amplifiers come off the pre-outs of this unit. Don't worry about any of that. If you're starting out, basically what you want is the cheapest compatible surround sound receiver you can get. Denon 5.2, around or under $300 is probably what you're going to be looking at for their entry level. It should have enough HDMI inputs. It should have enough, at least 1 HDMI output, should be the most modern 4K, HDMI 2.0, etc., etc. Once you have the surround receiver picked out, that's when you start to do calculations. Obviously, you need at least 2 speakers to start with, a left and a right, front channels. So now here's where you have to start making choices. You're spending $300, $350 maybe dollars on your surround receiver. How much do you spend on your front channels? Your first front channels. That's up to you. I entirely endorse people spending $300, $400 on a surround receiver, and then for $90, only $90, you get a pair of 𝗦𝘂 MB42Xs. These are $90 for 2 speakers, and the little tiny baby speakers. But what you do is you put them in your front channel. You have the surround receiver, you set it to stereo, no subwoofer, no center channel, no rears. Just get sound happening. Now, if that maxes out your budget, because now we're looking at nearly $500 for just the receiver and 2 speakers, that's fine. Use that for a bit. Now you think about what the next step is, because here's your choices. You could either you leave the small speakers in front and add a center. And what a center will do is it'll center the dialogue. Everything that happens on the screen in a movie comes out of a center channel. You'll notice in my home theater I don't have one. That's because I'm a loner. a rebel. And I usually sit here alone or with one other person. And we snuggle together right in the middle. And I don't need a center because the left and right will act as a center. That's why you don't need a center when you're listening to music. Usually Chris Cornell comes from dead center. But if you have guests, if you have a larger living room, if you're watching from an off-kilter angle, if you're standing here to watch movies occasionally in the kitchen, you want that center channel to fix the vocals. But you don't have to buy the center channel next. Here's your options. Cheap speakers in front. Better speakers in front. Now the cheap speakers move to the rear, like they did for me. Because rear channels do not have to be expensive. Those are $2,000 𝗘𝗲 R3s in front. And this is a $90 set of 𝗦𝘂𝗵𝗸𝗏42Xs. And these are a $60 set pair of Canto bends, which are no longer sold, unfortunately. Rear channels, you can cheap the fuck out. And here's another thing. You don't have to brand match. A lot of people will be like, I have clipped fronts, therefore I need clipped sides and clipped rears. You don't. You do want to timber match the front three. If I have a 𝗘𝗲 left and a 𝗘𝗲 right, I'd probably want a 𝗘𝗲 center. It's not written in stone, but you don't want things to sound different as it travels across. If I put, say, an ELAC center channel there, maybe it's a little bit bassier than these, and when things move, because the way home theaters, the way sound in movies works, is when sound travels across your space, you're not going to really tell the timbre difference from the left rear to the left, but you will definitely hear if a car sounds sharper from the left to the center to the right. So you want to sort of match those. Where not having a center, by the way, prevents that from happening, so it just fades it across. So now that's option one, is instead of you have just a receiver, you have cheap speakers, you replace them with better speakers next month. Okay, you spend $500 on just front speakers. You maybe get little towers. I saw a bunch of towers for sale on Black Friday. So now you put your little speakers in the back. Now you have a 4.0, because that's what the numbers are. 2.0 is just those. 2.1 would be 2 speakers and a subwoofer. 3.1 would be 3 speakers and a subwoofer. 3.0, 3 speakers in the front, no subwoofer. So having 4 speakers, 2 in the front, 2 in the rear, and no subwoofer is a 4.0. You've officially got a surround sound. Now, if you do that, your next option is to choose, do I want a center channel or do I want a subwoofer? Because if you have small speakers, and I'm telling you to start with these, and that's basically as small and as light as you go. If you want this to happen when you play movies, you basically need a subwoofer. I know Chewbacca, she loves this movie apparently. That's The Greatest Showman. Now that is a $900 15-inch rhythmic subwoofer. Remember your original budget of like $1,000? So you're not throwing $900 at it and then getting a surround receiver and a processor and some rears. So you could build this up over time. It should take someone who's on a budget, it should take 6 solid months to build a home theater. Start with cheap speakers in the front, then move those cheap speakers in the front to the rear. And if you're doing a 7.1, then you could decide to go sides first or back. Again, cheap speakers in the rear. Always cheap speakers in the rear. I've put $1,000 speakers in the back, and it doesn't make a huge difference because the effects that are coming out of there, some echoes, some music, completely overtaken by whatever the quality is in the front. That's where you want to spend your money. Now, how big a subwoofer? How much do you have to spend? Do you need to spend $900? Absolutely not. I've got an 18-foot by 15-foot room with 9-foot ceilings. How big your room is determines how much you should spend on your subwoofer. And also, personal preference. Some people are bass maniacs. I've met them. You walk into their home theater and it's not like, oh, listen to this, you know, the birds chirping. No, it's just literally that. But there's multiple subwoofers in multiple corners. So if you're one of those people, you're going to have to budget, you know, maybe 1 month you buy a subwoofer and the next month you buy literally another subwoofer. You can run 2 in a room as long as you do the sub crawl. Look that up. So now we've got, let's see, put the cheap ones in the front, then we move the cheap ones to the back, got better ones to the front. Then you have to decide if you want the center channel or the sub, or maybe both, whatever you can afford. It's all about what you can afford. But you have to start with a surround receiver. You have to. And these are not designed to last 10 years. Mine has been around for probably 6, but I bought $1,000 receiver, and it has all the HDMIs I need. It's only 1080p. There's no 4K on it. If I ever change my TV to a 4K or my projector to a 4K, I'm boned. So expect this piece to be obsolete before everything else. Speakers, good speakers will last forever. A subwoofer, you're probably going to get like maybe 10 years if you behave, because the amplifiers in it get shaken and things are rough, and you can have it repaired. Surround receiver first. Spend as little as you can on it. Get just the minimum amount of inputs, and get it from a decent high-rated brand. Denon, Marantz, Onkyo, Yamaha. Not Harman Kardon. I don't know. Harman Kardon just doesn't make good receivers. I've never ever recommended them like highly. Start with a 2.0. If you want to go 2.1 from the get-go, that's fine. You actually don't even need to have rear channels yet. I do highly recommend adding them, because there is something to it. I've had people argue that, oh, you only need a good 2.0 or 2.1 for movies. A good 2.1 for movies sounds amazing, but if you just put even the shittiest, cheapest speaker in the rear and you set it up properly, you get something else out of it. You get this, like, oh my God, surround sound for no money. At this point, $60 a pair of these were. Those are $90 a pair, or the ones without crossovers in them are, I think, also $70 a pair. You can make, the biggest problem people have with making a surround sound is, oh my God, the wires. And I've come up with a couple intricate solutions for that. Now, the ones that run along the floor and then up through this piping and then across the ceiling and then it goes here, and that was a pain in the ass. You might not be willing to do that. But these sides, my receiver's there, so that's not that hard. But to go from that receiver to this side required some effort. The hardest part about putting a rear channel is putting in the rear channel. And do not look for wireless rears. That is the stupidest idea I've ever heard. Because at that point, yes, your speaker is in the rear. Oh, and you don't need any signal to it, great. But then you still need to have power, so which means you're going to be running a transformer or something wired to the rear speaker. So the speaker over there, the wire comes out of here, comes down across this metal plate, and then I bought this 2.5-inch PVC piping, and you can't even see it from where I am. And I've run all my wires through it, and there's T-junctions where things pop out, and it goes all the way across the front, and then once we're here, it doesn't matter, it just goes up to my rear channel. Now, a lot of people have to tell you to wall mount your rears, and I used to have them on this screw here, but I've come to the conclusion that laying down almost any speaker, even a set of those micas, just against the wall and shining it up, if you have a flat wall, is a better solution. Just straight up. Try it, it's free. Moving your speakers around is free. Getting it to look right and sound right just requires a little bit of effort. So, what has this video taught you? A video taught you that you need to start basic 2.0, 2 speakers receiver. If you can afford to buy 2 cheap speakers and a sub and a receiver, by all means. If you want to add just a center channel because you really want to hear that dialogue, don't cheap out on the center channel. You can get cheap left and right and move them to the rear, but once you get a center channel, that's it. And everything that happens on that screen, or that screen, however you want to play it, is dependent on how much money you spent on a center channel. And well, it's not how much money, it's how robust and how violent. It's got to be a good center channel. You can't skimp on it. So you can get cheap, got to spend money. You can't get an $80 center channel and expect it to grow around you, because you could end up throwing that thing in the garbage. There's no other place to move it unless you get a 6.1 and put it in the middle rear. We're not going to talk about that. Now, my home theater is a bit of Frankenstein's monster, or dream, sweet dream. Because I've got, you know, dual subwoofers in front and separate amplifiers, and there's a set of towers, and this is the 0.1, and then I've got literally speakers holding up my speaker. So I've come a long way with this, and I'm telling you that this is the way I recommend everyone to do a home theater. Unless you have a $1,500, minimum $1,000 budget. You have a $1,000 budget, you spend $300 here, you spend $300 here, that's $600 gone. That means $400 for speakers, all speakers. So that's $90 a pair. It's $500. That's $90 a pair. The center channel, you're looking at like an $800 budget. Then you got to get wires and connections and everything else for your home theater. So even with $1,000 budget, you're cutting it really thin. You can maybe get a $250 set of speakers in the front, which could be plenty. You can get those Yamaha S803s. They're amazing for $300. But my recommendation, if you have $1,000 or less to spend in a home theater, don't do surround sound from the start. Get the surround sound receiver, 2 speakers. Move 2 speakers to the rear. Better speakers. Add a sub, add a center, add both, add one at a time, add none. If you have a 7.1 or 7.2 receiver, you could start off with as few channels as you want. The receiver will literally turn them off. Like, what do you got? I got left and right, and everything else goes off. Center goes off, rear goes off, sides go off. If you want multiple zones, if you have like an outdoor patio or something, then you have to look at an even higher end receiver. So that's more of your budget. But once you have this nailed down, hi Chewbacca. Once you have this nailed down, that's when you start dabbing into things. And the fact that rear channels can be cheap is why you can start with something. That 2 channels, then 4 channels, then maybe 5 or 4 and a sub. Anyway, I'm 𝗬𝗲_𝗏𝗂𝗏. I review speakers, headphones, and talk about this sort of crap. If you like it, subscribe. I'll be around. If you like these sorts of videos, please feel free to support me on Patreon in the upper right or down there. I do yard sales once a month. I also answer all your questions straight to you if you're paying me. And there's a $10 tier where I actually have you on a Patreon. So I'll see you around. And by the way, that wallpaper is in the description.